Greetings and welcome to another edition of Montpelier Connection. I'm Mike Mrowicki, State Representative for the Windham 4 District, Putney, Dummerston, Westminster. And today we have Carolyn Partridge, who used to represent the Windham 4 District, but now
it's Windham 3, which includes the towns of Athens, Brookline, Grafton, a small slice of North Westminster, all of Rockingham, so Bellas Falls, Saxons River, and my hometown of Windham.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
The legislative session is really picking up momentum. We're about a week away from the midpoint of the town meeting break, so things are really picking up. The floor action is starting to heat up. Bills are starting to come out of committee after literally months of researching and drafting, and we are in the process of looking at what the Senate has started to bring over to us as well, because we need to deal with what they send over.
Mm-hmm.
You are the chair of the House Agriculture Committee.
That's correct.
Lot of things are happening in agriculture in Vermont, and I wonder if you could give us a little update on working lands and other pieces that you're working on for that.
I'll be glad to. Thanks so much, Mike, and thanks for asking me to be here today. Agriculture is really an amazing economic driver in the state. Several years ago, as many of our listeners or viewers will remember, we did the Farm to Plate bill, which looks to expand our economic output and create jobs through incentives for farming. And last year, we were able to pass the Working Lands Enterprise Act, which, and we were very, very fortunate to get almost $1.2 million to invest there. And some of the investments that will be made include small grants for people to leverage, capital, bank loans, that sort of thing, jumpstart new businesses. There's another what we call bucket for technical assistance for people who want to expand their businesses, who need help with financial packaging, regulatory process, that sort of thing. And the third bucket is for larger infrastructure investments. And that could be storage, like a food hub. A lot of people are familiar with the Hardwick Food Venture Center, which is an amazing project. There's another new one, well, relatively new, the Mad River Food Hub. If anybody wants to Google that, that's a really fantastic project up in Waitsfield. So a food hub, and I will also say that we expanded, in the Working Lands Enterprise Act, we expanded the scope to not only agricultural products and sector, but forest products. We know that so many of our logs are heading north. If they could stay here.
You mean north of the border?
North of the border.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we know that if those logs could stay in the state, we could create jobs, and a lot of our sawmills have disappeared. So an infrastructure grant could be a kiln drying facility, help for folks with, sawmill production, pellet mill, value-added pieces. So, but the interesting thing that I should share with you, and I think a lot of people are probably aware of this, the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets put out a request for letters of intent, and for that, and by the time after we do the administration, we did have to create a position to administer all of this, but with the $1 million that was remaining, they put out a request for proposal. Interestingly, we've had over nearly $12 million in requests for the three buckets. I think it was 11.8 million last I heard. So there's clearly a need for this. There's clearly, a real desire for entrepreneurs to expand, to create businesses and jobs, and we're delighted that the governor put in his budget this year $1.5 million. Do we wish it could be more? Yes, because we want the program to get up and off the ground. And if people, apply for these grants a couple of times and don't receive them, they could get discouraged. But we're hoping that maybe we'll even find a revenue source for this program. I think it would be really valuable.
How do people apply for these grants?
Well, they've now closed.
Okay.
But
For this year.
But the process was to submit a letter of intent, and those letters of intent will be reviewed, and the ones that the Working Lands Enterprise Board feel have the greatest merit will be asked to do a more detailed presentation. We didn't want everybody to have to go to the lengths that the folks that are going to actually get these things go to, but at any rate, you know, they're now sifting through those. And I'd like to say that I give a lot of credit to this Working Lands Enterprise Board. They're essentially volunteers. I think they get a small per diem, maybe some mileage, but they're taking time out of their busy days to do this, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Another topic that's been a hot topic carrying over from last session has been genetically engineered foods or genetically modified. Where's that at now?
Well, we started markup recently. We are in the process of going through the bill. We did pass a bill out last year that I felt was extremely good, which is one of the reasons I signed on to that. Essentially, what's the same bill this year, along with 50 other people. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, and they are, you know, we're in the process of marking up now. We've taken weeks of testimony. We have gotten some assistance from the Vermont Law School, and they've helped us with some briefs on the state interest in health and environment. But I'm hoping to get that finalized by next week, maybe even early mid-next week. Sure. What's important to know is that it's not a ban on genetically engineered seed. It simply would require the labeling of food that is produced with genetic engineering. And quite a few of my constituents have reached out to me. They'd like to know what's in their food. Yeah. They have concerns because of health reasons, and there are others who are concerned about the environment and what these products may be doing to the environment. And it's very interesting when you get into the details. A lot of people think that the Food and Drug Administration, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, does a lot of testing on these products. They do not. They do none. They rely on the reports from the companies, from the testing that the companies do, or the testing of third-party laboratories that are paid by the companies. And so, you know, people have a lot of concerns. They feel a little like it's the fox guarding the hen house. So they would like to see those products labeled.
The concerns I've been hearing from constituents is that we just don't know.
Right.
And we would like to, or we would like to know, have that information so we can make an informed choice as to what products we want, since we don't know. And a lot of people would rather err on the side of caution when it comes to what we put in our bodies.
That's right. That's right. As I've said in committee a couple of times, in World War I, my grandfather fought in the trenches in France. And he was handed cigarettes. This was a strategy to, you know, promote consumers of cigarettes. And years and years later, we determined that they're harmful to your health. Testing was done, and packages began to be labeled so people can make their choice. The jury's out. There have not been any long-term feeding studies, especially on humans, of course, but nor on laboratory animals. The longest study, I think, is 2 years. So we feel that it's important people be able to make a choice. But we also have to be aware of the case back in the 90s regarding bovine growth hormone, and the fact that when it went to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, public curiosity was not enough of a state interest to compel the labeling of milk. And so we have to prove, and that's why we're working so hard to make this a defensible bill, because we fully expect this to be litigated. So we need to prove that there are people who have health concerns, that there are state interests regarding the environment, agriculture, and in fact religious concerns as well. So,
one of the things that's been a topic on the national scene and here in the state is the relationship and the dependence, really, of agriculture on immigrant workers. Is that anything your committee is taking a look at?
Yes, actually, there, and I should sort of clarify that we do, in the state of Vermont, we do use what are known as H2A workers, and these workers are generally from Jamaica. They're from other countries as well, but they are documented workers, and they're coming to our country to help with especially vegetable farming and picking apples. And the Jamaican workers are highly skilled workers, and they do work that Americans do not want to do. And we really highly value them, and they frequently come back to the same farm year after year, and they become part of the family. But part of the problem is, and we discovered this last year, because of the immigration issues in general in this country, the Department of Labor and Homeland Security have made it harder and harder for farmers to go through the process and get these workers. So we are looking at that, and then we also have undocumented workers who are vital to our dairy industry, and so we respect them as well and value them, but it's kind of a touchy situation because they are undocumented in some cases. So I know Senator Leahy has been working hard to expand the H2A program to dairy workers. That hasn't quite happened yet, but we thank him for his work. But we really have to resolve this. And one issue that has gotten some attention, although it hasn't come to my committee yet, is the notion of driver's licenses for undocumented workers. And there are others. Representative Molly Burke is really spearheading that, and she could probably tell us more about that. But we want our workers, any worker in the state of Vermont, to be safe and to be treated well and to be valued. So these are all issues that we need to look at, but in particular the undocumented workers.
Is there anything on the horizon for the House Ag Committee that viewers might want to know about?
Well, we know that the Senate has passed a resolution regarding maple grading, and we'll take that up after what we call crossover, which is the week we get back from town meeting. We will have crossover, and that's just sort of a made-up date by which we have to get our bills over to the Senate, and the Senate has to get their bills over to us. And so we'll we'll take that resolution up after crossover. That has to do with sort of switching over to the international standards for maple, which I'm not going to be able to remember all of them. They sort of give it a flavor descriptor as well as a color. For syrup that is going to stay in the state of Vermont, be sold within the state, the Vermont grade fancy will still be able to be used. But we will be switching over. We know that the maple industry has really expanded in the state of Vermont. We're making, I could be wrong about this number, but I think we've tripled the number of taps we have in the last 10 years. And so there's huge production, and we want to be able to market that internationally.
Now, this is something that started as a suggestion from the industry?
It did. there was a group of entrepreneurs and businessmen who took this up, studied it. It came to us as a bill from the agency. They were asking us for permission to promulgate rules to change maple standards. And last year, when we began to take testimony, it came over to us from the Senate. And when we began to take testimony, it became clear that there were quite a few smaller maple producers, in particular from Windham County, who were very distressed by this. And so we took testimony from them. We realized in the course of taking testimony that the agency already had the rulemaking authority to do that, and we basically asked them to go back to the drawing board, take further testimony, and then come back to us, which they have done. So I think most people are on board. There are some people who are probably not happy about this, but in order to expand our market, I think we're going to probably be switching over, and the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets will be doing rulemaking. Part of that process is to take testimony from people. I think they have to have 2 or 3 hearings, and I would highly recommend, if you're opposed to this, to be a part of the testimony that happens at that time.
On the bigger picture, outside of agriculture, are there issues that you're following especially? I mean, healthcare is something a lot of people are concerned about as we move forward with. People are looking for more healthcare for less dollars because healthcare costs keep rising and coverage shrinks.
Yeah.
What are you tracking as we move into the session?
Well, I have a lot of faith in the committees that are handling the healthcare, and it's gotten so much attention. I will say, Mike, that when I first came to Montpelier, my major incentive was healthcare. Because of personal experiences I had had, which I've written about and been published in the Brattleboro Reformer, I really thought that every Vermonter should have access to comprehensive, high-quality health care. But now that it's gained so much attention, I have a certain amount of comfort that it's being dealt with. What I'm also tracking and what I'm passionate about... So
you're saying we're on the right track?
I believe so, yes.
I agree.
Yeah. Single payer I've been an advocate for single payer since the early 90s. That hasn't changed. I think it's the most cost-effective way of delivering comprehensive, high-quality health care to Vermonters and to the rest of the country. But I think we're going to be the experimenters. We're going to be on the vanguard. So I feel we are definitely on the right track, and I am pleased with what's going on. It's not going to be an easy process as we switch over, but I think it's got to happen. I'm also following education issues. As many people know, I'm the chair of the Windham School Board, and so I'm aware of what happens. We just debated yesterday the property or the education funding bill, which is including an increase in property taxes, and I know that's a concern to people. But what I sort of realized through this process is that local towns vote their budgets in and create their budgets and vote them in, and the legislature is tasked with figuring out the way to fund that. Right. In collaboration with the administration, the tax department, and so it's a challenge. The one thing that I've been very concerned about is that there was there was conversation about eliminating the small schools grants, and that I am really opposed to. When Act 60 went into place, a formula was created that relied on per pupil spending. And there was a recognition soon thereafter that when that occurs, small schools which do not have an economy of scale can be adversely impacted. So I am always watchful regarding the small schools grants, and I think for the time being we have We have fought that back, but I'm always watchful and vigilant.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, thank you, Mike, for the opportunity. This time has gone so quickly.
Yeah, well, it continues to be a pleasure to work with you and our whole delegation here in Windham County.
Yeah.
And thanks again to the people back at BCTV for bringing the State House closer to you. And we'll be back soon again with another report from Montpelier in the State House. And until then, I'm Mike Mrowicki. Thanks